There are 31 teams in pro football, and then there are the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love that so much. I will never forget that from when I was a little kid. Although, it's an old NFL films thing, so it was back when there were 28 teams in the league and not the full-on 32 that we have now. So it was 27 teams in pro football, and then there are the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I will never forget that, and today we are talking about those very same Pittsburgh Steelers. Actually, kind of very similar, at least defensively, just wreaking havoc on that side of the ball. So that's kind of fun, but, other parts of the game, like a solid run game, completely lack existing at all. So, what do you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, the first thing that you have to talk about when you talk about the Steelers is that their defense was just phenomenal last season. The front seven, especially, was great. Even them missing Devin Bush. Spillane came in and had himself a great season. And I think he even went down at some point too, and they had to really go into their reserves there. And all their linebackers played very well. But secondary play was a little shaky for them, and it has been over the past couple of years, but the unit as a whole is being held down by Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he's really like keeping that secondary kind of true. I guess like if he's all over the place, he's kind of being cleaned up for a lot of the corners and the other safety that lines up next to him because there are just some guys like Joe Hayden. I respect him. I like him a lot, but he's getting up there, and the rest of the guys, it's like, oh, okay, all right. The offense spreads the ball out well, but I mean that's easy to do when you're throwing the ball 50 times a game. I mean it's bound to get in other guys' hands. They cannot get much of anything out of the run, and that goes into my next point of their O-line was hit really, really hard with injuries during the season. That did not help them perform well as a unit, especially in the run game. Just nothing gets going ever. Like going through the games that I watch, it's almost instant. What?
Remember to be careful here when talking about the
I'm
O
not saying
line.
that they're the best. I didn't say that
No,
they
no,
have the
no,
best offensive
no,
line in the
no,
league. I'm not going to have people in the comments now
no,
saying
no,
like,
no, no.
"How dare? Where are your metrics to determine the best offensive line in the league?"
Hang on. We just have to make it clear. Just because people didn't play last season does not mean that they could still not be good players this season. That's the
Yes,
important part, okay? So
yes.
even if
Injuries
they
does
didn't
not
play last year,
automatically make someone bad at their job. Some people tend to forget that. So,
yes,
the
continue. Sorry.
Steelers do have good offensive linemen, or had good offensive linemen. Injuries really plagued that group, and it just shows with like the instantly pass rushers getting to Ben and him having to go with the dump offs, and that's what they excelled in their offense. But you're scheming around having a bad offensive line. That's what their offense was mainly last season. What do you got? Because I really went in on some stats here. So
Yeah, I, I, I'm interested. Well, that was weird because kind of the first 2 points I don't think I necessarily agree with you on, but I can understand why you said them. So the first point with the defensive backs kind of being held up by Minka Fitzpatrick, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think the corners actually play pretty well there, but I think that could be a lot of coaching as opposed to like the actual player ability. Um, and then, although I will say, definitely the other safety spot that isn't Minka Fitzpatrick, yes, that is very questionable.
hmm
I don't know how much I like that at all. It's also interesting. You mentioned Devin Bush, and I'm just like, uh, I kind of forgot he existed because, like, obviously just going back over everything last season, and then I was looking at the roster again, and I was like, oh yeah, Devin Bush is on this team. Like, he would really help them, and their defense is already really good. So that's just funny to think about. What was the second thing you said again? Because I had a point about that.
spread the ball well.
Oh yeah, no. When I got to okay, I'll. This is in my stats part, but I just thought this was really weird to actually look at. Um, so only 5 guys on the team caught touchdown passes last year, and only 7 offensive players scored a touchdown at all. I just thought that was a really low number, and I wanted to point that out. But yeah, in terms of like how many touchdowns they scored, they actually all had like decent touchdown numbers. But it's actually not like after the starters, it's basically just the starters, which is the weird part.
Yeah.
For my actual like stuff I wrote down for last season, I got a decent amount here. I love TJ Watt. He's so good, and somehow he's like also still underrated, even though he's so good, and like people know he's really talented, but he's still underrated somehow. I don't get that. Maybe just because everybody got bored of Watt after they had one of the Watts. So much short passing game. It is honestly wild. These receivers can go deep. They just choose not to 90% of the time, it feels like. None of the running backs excited me at all last season. I hated to say this, but Ray McLeod was actually like used really well in the role that they put him in. Chase Claypool is such a big, fast body that he could have so many opportunities down the field, and he's still just like all the other guys gets relegated to working underneath like way too often. And the more often that he would be getting down the field, the more often this team would be successful, which just felt obvious to me, but they chose to keep working against that. I mean, you have two other guys that definitely can work the underneath game really well, so I don't know why he needs to try to do that too. Minkah Fitzpatrick, huge playmaker, absolutely love him. I praise so many safeties, but he's actually like a top 5 safety in the league, like arguably the best. The Steelers are actually one of the few teams taking advantage of like wild, just like out there quad set formations. Just love creativity, so that's good. I'm not watching every Steelers game, but it is very strange to me. I kind of come back to Claypool a lot in this, that there are actually people out there that like say other guys on the team are the number one receiver. Like I feel like it's Claypool is the obvious number one, and then the other two guys are like right there behind him. No matter what the stats say, I don't care. I feel like Claypool should be the number one target on almost every play, like going through the progression. They made Baker Mayfield look like it was his first game as a rookie in the first Cleveland game. The first 20 minutes of the playoff game basically was completely the opposite for the first 20 minutes of the first Browns game, which was very interesting. And then I have to say, I think that Eric Ebron is a solid option at tight end. When you look at other guys with starting jobs around the league, I really don't think he's that bad. I don't know what most other people think of him, but I think he's pretty solid for them. I'll say Claypool has the potential of guys that we talk about that we love, like A.J. Brown. And I swear he got like slimmer coming into the league. He's kind of like Justin Jefferson. I wasn't in love with him either, but they kind of changed like massive parts of their game, it felt like, once they got to the NFL. He just seems so much slimmer and faster than he was in college, from what I remember. And it obviously helps him. I mean, it looks like there's nothing he can't do now. And has amazing potential. They dropped so many passes in the Buffalo game. I mean, if they caught those, it would have been so much closer of a game. They did something that was really interesting in the Buffalo game too, which was actually managed to lose to the Bills without losing to like Josh Allen, like almost every other team did. Like Josh Allen was really not the reason they lost that game. It was like mainly Stephon Diggs and then like Teron Johnson and a few other plays by the defense. It really wasn't Josh Allen, which is interesting because that doesn't happen a lot in games against the Bills. When at this point, that was after I had watched 3 games, and the running game just was non-existent still. So, I mean, didn't watch all 16 of them back, but geez, 3 games in, not a good sample at all. That first quarter of the Browns game in the playoffs very well may have been the worst quarter of football I've seen by an NFL team. When you watch youth football and 2 teams are just completely outmatched, it's one thing for a quarter to go that badly. But geez, when you're watching an NFL team play and they play 15 minutes and have one positive play, like one like actually obvious like positive play, and all it was is an 11-yard reception for a first down on 2nd and 10, it's like that was terrible. And then the last thing I say is the offense really moved the ball well after the first quarter, though, and I think this kind of just lends itself to the argument that if you're bad at running the ball, like if you know you're a bad running team, just embrace what you're good at. Sometimes it's okay to do that, because I don't think they're helping themselves by running the ball on early downs, at least last season with what they had. If if they had more of a, I mean, granted, I'm saying that while they also need to like get the ball down the field more, but I really don't think running the ball was helping this team much at all. Now this season, I think they should be better. So I'm not going to say that for this upcoming season. I think they should be slightly better running the ball. I don't know how much better. It's going to depend a lot on rookies, which is always a question mark. But yeah, that's what I got there. What do you got for stats?
All right, so I've had some people in the comments coming at me, like not doing some great research. So I dug deep into the advanced stats here, all right, so I could have some talking points for the Steelers. Their offense, I mean, balls were getting in the receivers' hands a lot, but those receivers are having some fumbling problems, and this is just something I wanted to point out. Chase Claypool, 3 fumbles. Juju, 3 fumbles. James Conner, 2 fumbles. Benny Snell, 2. Ray, 2. Deontay Johnson, 2. Eric Ebron, 1. I don't know for sure how many of those were lost and gotten back there, but that's just very, very strange. Like, I know it makes sense for the volume that they're getting targets and the ball in their hands that they're going to have fumbles, but you'd think, like, at least from Juju, because his whole thing is, like, he protects the ball over the middle. He's a tough guy. He's not going to lose the ball a lot. 3 fumbles is kind of eye-opening for that. And for both of your 2 running backs that didn't really get a lot of touches, them having 2 fumbles apiece is kind of shaky there. And then the second advanced stat that I have is their 4th down defense. It was insane last season. They only allowed 5 conversions on 20 attempts for opposing teams on 4th down. That is absurd with how great that is. Like that's probably the best in the league. I'd have to guess. It just shows how great their front 7 was. Like I said, of like if it was a yard to go or inches to go, they're stuffing that right there because of how tough those guys are up front.
Yeah, that actually is very impressive. You think about like what the situations would be where you're going to be in a 4th down and want to go for it, then it's like that. Yeah, I mean, it's just really impressive that they can hold guys when they're probably only 1 or 2 yards away most of the time in those situations. But as for the fumbling thing, I'll just want to save Eric Ebron here, okay? I'm going to protect Eric Ebron.
No, one fumble. I threw in all of them.
Yes, I know. I saw the Eric Ebron fumble, and I'm just thinking to myself when I see it, I'm like, dude, there is not a human being who hangs on to that football. So I'm the only guy I'm going to give credit to is Eric Ebron. Also, actually, the other thing I thought of while you were saying that, though, is the game a few years ago against the Saints, where the Steelers were trying to come back at the end when Antonio was still on the team. And Juju fumbles at the end of the game, and then Antonio absolutely rips into him, and it's one of the reasons he's not on the team the next season. Just very, very amusing stuff. This is what I got for stats, though. Ben Roethlisberger threw for 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. James Conner had 721 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. Honestly, I was surprised by that because he had over 4 yards a carry, and I really didn't think that he would hit that. So that's kind of impressive. I don't know whether to put that more into the stock of the O-line being better last season than I thought it was, or Conner himself being better. Because I really, like I said when I was watching them, not only did they not run the ball very well, but like I'm really not impressed with any of the running backs that were on the roster. Like they did not excite me much at all. And that's why I really can't knock the Najee Harris pick too much because even though we haven't gotten to it yet, it's just like, dude, I don't feel like those guys did anything past what the O-line got them. So maybe the O-line was better than I thought it was, just given the fact that he was even able to get to 4 yards per carry because I was shocked to see that he got there. They had 3 800-plus yards receivers. Honestly, though, with the 3 top dogs they have in the receiver room, 2 of them should get up to 1,000 and 1 of them should get to 800, like bare minimum. So the fact that none of them surpassed 1,000 was kind of surprising, and I feel like the guy that you should definitely be trying to get to 1,000 is Claypool because he should be getting the most targets just with what he can do. Then I mentioned the thing with the 5 guys only 5 guys catching touchdown passes and only 7 total offensive players scored a touchdown at all. Can you name all of them?
Juju, Claypool, Ebron, uh, Deontay Johnson, James
Yes.
Washington,
Yes. That's all the
uh,
receivers, and then two more.
and then James Conner and Benny Snell.
Yep. That's every single person who scored an offensive touchdown for the Steelers last year. Wild. Um, Chris Boswell was really good, honestly. Missed a few more extra points than he should have, but field goals was solid. And I mean, I feel like kicking in Pittsburgh is really tough, so that's good. 4 interceptions for Minka Fitzpatrick led the team. Tons of guys hit a solid number of passes defended, which is awesome. They had 7 guys with 7+ passes defended. Cameron Sutton forced 3 fumbles. TJ Watt had 15 sacks. Stephon Tuitt had 11. And 79 tackles led the team from Minka Fitzpatrick. And he probably could have gotten more if he would learn to wrap up sometimes. Sometimes he needs to wrap up and he just hits guys and lets him keep running. And as Bills fans, I'm thinking of a Stephon Diggs play, but I mean, there were even more examples than I saw in other games too. So that was like, oh, geez, you led the team and you're still not having great form. 70 tackles for Vince Williams was solid too. And then this is insane. 23 tackles for a loss for TJ Watt is absolutely amazing. Vince Williams also had 14 tackles for loss, and Stephon Tuitt had 10. My favorite note, though, in the statistics is that I got all the way through all those defensive statistics that I just read you, and yet the guy that's getting paid, what is it, like $17.5 million a season to leave Pittsburgh was not mentioned once in any of my stats that I mentioned. In Bud
I think
Dupree.
he was hurt most of last season.
Bud Dupree?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good because he's not impressive. I mean, it's not good that he's injured, but I was just like, man, he didn't pop up at all.
He only all right. He played in 11 games last season.
Yeah, that's enough time where you shouldn't be leading the team in any stats. So maybe I shouldn't be discrediting him that much. Even when I was watching the games back, he was definitely on the field for at bare minimum 2 of the games that I was watching, and he just didn't seem like he had as much of an impact as the other guys did nearly as much. And I feel like that isolates him a lot more than he's going to get isolated on Tennessee. I just still don't love that, and I wanted to point it out again. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I have a note on that when we get to free agents next because I just didn't want to mention it up there because there's no use in talking about him for that. He's not going to be with the team next season.
Fair. What you got for acquisitions?
For acquisitions, I mean, I really praise the Steelers on going out there and getting a bunch of tier 2 offensive linemen because they lost a bunch of tier 1 offensive linemen, so they're getting a bunch of guys that have been like career backups or swing tackles or just guys that could get chucked in there at whatever guard position. They bring in B.J. Finney, who's a center, Joe Haig, who dropped a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Try Turner, who is their David DeCastro replacement now. He's the best offensive lineman that they bring in out of all these guys. He's a Pro Bowler. He's good, but the other guys, Rashad Coward, bring him in. He's gonna be more depth for that offensive line. But for the Steelers, I would probably be like, oh, you're really giving money to like these guys, but they just need to take whatever, like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks in camp. Just get the best 5 out there you possibly can because it was hard for them to get 5 healthy guys out there, and let alone their 5 best guys all out there at the same time. And the last acquisition that I have to mention is Kalen Ballage.
Yeah, I only had 2 linemen to mention and Kalen Ballage. But no, I think that what they're doing, I mean, we've seen teams do much worse things. Like, we've seen teams, like, look at a position where they just get absolutely wrecked, like, the entire thing is gone after the season, and it's like, oh, we were decent there before. So now that we just have a bunch of backups left, we're not even going to try to replace anybody. And it's like, that's terrible. I will say, I can't speak on the offensive line a ton, and just, I mean, name-wise, I know B.J. Finney, and I've heard, like, in the past, I've heard solid things about Try Turner. So, with that being said, I'm like, okay, if these 2 guys can step in for 2 other guys that they lost, then that really only means that they need to get one of these guys two guys that they picked in the draft to be decent. And then they've also got two other guys that should also be able to like kind of help in the run game somewhat more, even though they're not offensive linemen. And if those things can all come together, then I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was before we looked at this team today.
Okay. I don't know if I fully agree with you on that, but going to their losses, I mean, it's a longer list than for their gains. I think kind of the four bigger names on this are Villanueva, Pouncey, DeCastro, and Bud Dupree. Just three solid starters for their O-line gone, either to retirement like Pouncey, division rival like Villanueva, or DeCastro, who's probably contemplating one of those two options. Bud Dupree, he got paid so much to go to Tennessee. I mean, Steelers fans, you should not be losing sleep over having Bud Dupree leave. Any team that can be tricked into paying him that much money after low quality play that I saw from him, like you said, he is on a defensive line with Stephon Tuitt and TJ Watt and a bunch of other guys where he is not isolated at all. Like, he's just one of the guys that they have to block, and the priority is going to TJ Watt there. Now he's going to Tennessee, where the main priority is going to be him, and he still isn't doing much when the main priority isn't him. So it's just really, really bad. The Titans are going to be such a good team, but that pickup just very, very struggling to understand it. And then the other losses that I have are Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, James Conner, and Matt Fiedler.
Yeah, you hit all the ones I had. I mean, really though, the thing is I think with what they did, like, really the only guys that I'm super concerned about are those offensive linemen. The rest of the guys I feel like are replaceable, and I don't feel as much worry about them.
Yeah. All right, to their draft now. Their draft is kind of a more controversial one to just talking heads as a whole because of what they did with their first round pick and their second round pick too. So you've already expressed your thoughts on Najee Harris a little bit, so I'll just get in there. First round running back, especially for a team that had as much lacking at the offensive line position as they did. I didn't understand it at first. I do know Najee Harris is a phenomenal talent. He is great. He can do a lot more than what the offensive line gives him. He can do it all. But with seeing some trade ups that teams had where they were given like their first and then a fourth or a third and moving up like 4 or 5 spots in the draft, they could have definitely taken one of the top 3 offensive tackle, or Tevin Jenkins was still even on the board too at that point. Get one of the really, really good offensive linemen that are in the draft with that pick there. And then maybe Najee Harris is still there in the second. Probably not, but I don't think running back is that big of a priority. It'd be their weakest position at that point if they prioritized offensive line. But their scheme really doesn't rely on a running back that much because they just use the short passing game as their run game. So that was one pick. I do like the player. Don't really like the team that he went to, though. Maybe they use him in a different way than they were using their running backs last season because he's such a better talent.
Well, I mean, the running backs caught no touchdown passes last year, and I feel like Najee is going to be able to do stuff out of the backfield that none of the other guys could do. I also think he's an insane athlete, and I only think that there were 2 running backs in this draft that you could really say were like high level guys, and then there was kind of a solid drop off after him and ETN. So with that being said, I don't think that either of those guys are going to be there in the second round. For this pick alone, I'm going to say that I like it, and I still do think that because I really was underwhelmed by what their running backs did last season. Like, not impressed with them at all. Like, just going to keep reiterating that, sorry. But I feel like this is one of few teams that I really can't knock for picking a running back because their running back was just so, like, underwhelming prior to this. Now, the second round pick, on the other hand, if you're okay with me getting into this one first.
Yeah.
This is tougher because I did make the classification that, like, if you pick a running back in the first round, you cannot pick anything but an offensive lineman in the second round. They didn't pick an offensive lineman. It's as close. It's as close to, like, it's still not okay. It's just not. I'm not going to say that it's okay. They shouldn't have done this, but it's as close to okay as they could have made it, because Freiermuth is out of Penn State. He's just weird. What I want him to be is, I want him to be a mauler in the run game, like, especially for a second round pick, because for what they're getting with him at the tight end position, I'm not insane about him. But if he really blocked well, then it would be another thing. The thing is, after watching him a little bit, I watched him back a little bit, just like a game tape of, like, every play, and I watched him blocking a lot. I really wouldn't call him a mauler in the run game. He's just a solid blocker, and I don't think that's enough to make him go in the second round. I still think they should have went offensive line here, but at least the next two picks, they tried to fix it up by going offensive line consecutively. And I don't know how well Eric Ebron is blocking for them, but Freiermuth is decent enough that I think he is probably an upgrade blocking-wise at the tight end position. And if they run towards their tight end heavily next season to try to get the run game going, then okay, but you really need these third and fourth round offensive linemen to hit now.
Yeah. When I watched Freiermuth, it's because I watched the prospects after I went through and watched the games. He just seems very, very similar to Ebron, which is weird because I wouldn't expect them to be running two tight end sets. Like you said, they're running a bunch of quad sets that are, like, really cool and exotic that no other teams are doing, and it's innovation. That's awesome. Why are you going to have two tight ends that should be on the field at the same time? Because they're both solid, unless they have some plan to get rid of Ebron. But they're very, very similar guys with. They're decent blockers, but they're mainly receiving threat. They're not going to be a guy that you're just like, all right, this is our extra lineman here. If they would have gone Tommy Tremble, I would have liked the pick a little bit more. I completely agree with you, because I said this. We both mocked Najee Harris to go to them in the first round. We both did. And we both said in our mocks, they're going to take a running back here. They better take an offensive lineman in the second round. If they don't, it's going to be tough. And they didn't take an offensive lineman. They took a tight end, it's really weird. It's like two luxury picks when they have, like, a gaping hole in front of them for offensive line.
Yeah. Well, the Raiders ruined my scenario of me thinking, oh, the guy they'll go get in the second round will be Alex Leatherwood, because, what did he have, an 87.5% chance to be available at the beginning of the third round? So I was like, oh, the end of the second round, Alex Leatherwood will be there and they'll be able to grab him. But no, the Raiders took him before the Pittsburgh Steelers were even on the clock for their first pick, right? So, I mean, just like, what is going on?
Yeah. I'm glad that they eventually did take some offensive line here, but if offensive linemen, but if you look at, like, the stats and the way it pans out, the percentage for offensive linemen to pan out the further you go back in the draft, it just falls off a cliff after the first two rounds.
Oh yeah, but I mean, what position does that not happen at?
Yeah, well, what was the one stat that they showed during the draft? Like, a majority of NFL players are taken after the third round, or a majority of players in the league are taken after the third round. I was like, yeah, no way, really? But the Steelers, I mean, they've had some fantastic offensive linemen for them, during, like, the past decade, really, with these guys that they've had. So hopefully they can develop these guys like they did the other ones. Kendrick Green, he's real nasty. I mean, I don't have much negative to say about him. He does not give up on a play. He's constantly running downfield with the running back and just throwing his body at anyone he can to make it easier for the running back. Just got a real mean streak to him.
I'll say this. It's interesting that they go get a guy in Try Turner that's, like, the one guy that we're kind of like, okay, he could start. He'll be fine. He's definitely interior. Like, he's definitely probably going to play guard for them. So, with that being said, we still have the tackle that hasn't gotten replaced yet. And you went guard first. But I guess, I don't know. They still it's just interesting to me that that's how they chose to do that. They
Yeah, I
went guard
think
before tackle.
I don't know is the perfect thing to say about their offensive line as a whole. I don't know. Uh, and that is true with Dan Moore Jr. He's a I mean, it's one thing to take offensive linemen late. I mean, we've said like, oh, good offensive line depth here, but he's probably going to be a starter, and he's a left tackle in the fourth round. And if you're expecting him to play left tackle, I don't know. Like Big Ben's probably in his last year. This is probably Big Ben's last year, and you're gonna have his blind side protected by a guy in the fourth round. I don't know how happy Ben is about that. Just like he's real brittle, and he could be getting snapped if Dan Moore Jr. does not pan out. But he seemed decent. Just don't know why you take a left tackle in the fourth.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. It's like, that's probably the most important position on the offensive line in terms of pass protecting, and we're gonna fill that in the fourth instead of in the second, third, or even first. It's very weird. But I will say, at least this is what we have to say. At least we hated the run game, and you can make the argument that all four of the first picks should help the run game.
Yes.
So we do have to give some credit there. Don't fully knock it, because I don't think it was atrocious. I don't think it was the best, but I don't think it was atrocious. It's somewhere in the middle. But as for the rest of the later picks, I kind of like all these later guys.
Oh yeah,
I gotta be honest.
I like all their late picks.
Isaiah Loudermilk, he's big and has plenty of speed while being a force up front. Even though they don't need much help up front on defense, I understand why they couldn't pass him up. He was just dominant, like with how he played. He was so strong in the interior. I liked him.
Yeah, you skipped Buddy Johnson though. You skipped Buddy Johnson. They get rid of Bud and they replace him with Buddy. Did you not watch any Buddy Johnson? You really skipped over their second, fourth round pick. Wow.
I'm sorry,
Wow.
I did.
Thought you were a professional. All right, so let me take care of Buddy Johnson then. He's very solid. He's an off-ball linebacker. They need more of that. I mean, just when Devin Bush went down last season, and they're like, all right, Nick Spillane, get out there. And then Spillane went down. They're like, guy on the practice squad, we need you to play like a couple games for us because we don't have anyone else. I don't have a problem with them going out and using a fourth round pick on that. Maybe even use one earlier, but I mean, if you're going to get a running back at tight end for second round, and you're the Steelers, you better get offensive linemen with your next couple. So I can understand why they didn't go earlier with a linebacker there. Pretty good in coverage. Great at going and get the QB when they send him. Yeah, I didn't really have anything bad to say about him.
I can't disagree with anything you said right there.
Yeah.
So now tell me about Loudermilk.
Yeah, Loudermilk. I mean, awesome name. Just the Steelers have a way of developing defensive linemen. Very technical with his hands. Reads, reacts well. It doesn't. I saw a couple times like he was the one that blew up the option for teams. I'm like, oh, he's not even on the. He's in the interior and he's blowing up an option play because he's that smart and being able to react to it. So I really liked him.
Okay, good. What do you got on Roche?
Roche, he's got great speed. It was really weird. Because Miami, you got the two edge rushers out of there in Rousseau and Phillips, and then Roche's there, and it's like, oh, he's kind of the same thing as the other guys, but he doesn't have the physical attributes that the other two have of like really long, lengthy. He's kind of more compact than the other two, but he brings most of what they bring to the table. Very fast, reacts well. Yeah.
Yeah, I said the third edge from Miami could have made him fall just because he's sucked down the depth chart. But yeah, he's a very good form tackler, and Pittsburgh kind of needs that because Minka doesn't feel like doing that, and he's the best tackler on their team. Plays very fast and beats people with his quickness. Size is the only knock I see. I like him because even though he's a speed rusher, which I generally think is very simple and a lot of people can do no matter who they are, he finds a way to get into the interior a decent amount and still make plays there as a speed rusher, which is nice. It's different from what we normally see. Trey Norwood. I may be going crazy here, but I swear I thought this guy got picked by another team. I swear this guy already got picked by somebody, but he couldn't have because I don't know. That's what happens when you watch this many guys, right? But I like him as a player for a late round draft pick. He makes sense with the fact that they lost a decent amount of depth in the secondary, and he seems fine.
Yeah, during pre-draft, looking through all the safeties, because we both looked through like 30 safeties apiece, trying to find our own top 10 because that safety class was insane. What I had to say about him, and I went back just to make sure this is true. I was like, the ball is just magnetized to him. He gets so many interceptions. The ball's just thrown to him, and I mean the Steelers could really use a guy like that, especially in their secondary to replace Terrell Edmonds. I know the 7th round guys are going to replace the dude that they used the first round pick on, but I mean you could always use a guy that just has the luck of getting the ball thrown straight to him.
Now, I don't know why this was, because I thought that when I was watching it, I'm like, this guy looks like a safety. But on NFL.com, he was listed as a corner, which was interesting. I don't know if he entered the draft as a corner or what the Steelers' plan is with him, but I thought he was listed as a corner.
I went and got their draft list from the Steelers' official website, and it had him listed as a safety.
That's good, because, I mean, that makes a lot more sense for Pittsburgh than corner. I just thought it was weird to see that on NFL.com. And their best pick of their draft is their last pick.
My favorite punter, Presley Harvin III. Absolute unit and an athlete he is. The fakes that you see him run, you would not expect a big boy like him to be able to do it. One bone that I have to pick. I can't remember the name of the channel, but it was a Steelers like fan YouTube channel, and in the thumbnail they like bloated him a bunch more. Don't be knocking my guy Presley Harvin III, all right? He's gonna be your franchise punter, and you're out here making him look more gigantic than he is. He's a unit, all right? He's not bloated. I don't get that.
Yeah. I said there's no way to knock this pick. He's a man amongst boys at the punter position, and he better make the roster. Last thing of note, though, since we actually got through all the picks, I actually don't have anything for UDFAs either because I didn't think that there was anybody significant that was an undrafted free agent that I looked at and just even recognized, to be frank. But this is the first team. Now, it's probably not the first team that actually has done this. It's the first team that I've actually bothered to notice has done this. No obligatory wide receiver pick because they actually have wide receivers on roster. They should get a round of applause for that.
I won't give them a full round of applause because I'm pretty sure there's been a team before that hasn't taken a wide receiver.
No, I know. It's just nice to see a team that has wide receivers realize, hey, we don't need receivers, and they kind of at least somewhat decently went out and filled their positions of need, even if it wasn't in the correct order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you'll get the schedule first today. The over/under is 9 wins for this team.
Oh, so let me just start this off by saying, and I haven't said this in a while, but all my games match up, all right? I'm not doing anything different for all this. And coming into this, and I knew this, like looking at it, just seeing how it was shaking out when I was filling out my Excel sheet with all the teams on it. Steelers have been a punching bag for bad teams for me. I've had some really bad teams beat the Steelers in their games and have it be one of their only win or their second only win that they have. So, and I don't fully disagree with it, even going back and looking at this team. Defense is very good. I don't know how this offense is going to do. So, let's just get into it here. Week 1, at Buffalo. I think the Bills take that one. Defense wins championships. Defense does not win you regular season games, too. Let me just put that in there. I've said this before. Defense wins you championships. It doesn't win you regular season games. So, the Bills have a better offense. I mean, it's insane to say this, but they have a better offensive line than the Steelers do. As a Bills fan, just like it's really weird for me to say that. Week 2 at Vegas. This is another team. Vegas is bad, but I have Vegas beating the Steelers here. I just think that this is one of the weird games that Vegas is going to win because they always win a couple weird ones. This is going to be it.
I think the Steelers are the home team, though.
Yeah.
Okay, you said at Vegas. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, home. I don't even have the at sign there, but yeah, it's a home game. It's just one of those weird things where like Vegas shouldn't win it. They're traveling to the other side of the country. They shouldn't win it. They're going to though because they do stupid stuff. They're a stupid team. Week 3, Cincy at home. They win it. They win it. First win of the season. Home against Cincy. Week 4 at Green Bay. I'm starting to come to terms now. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's going to be the QB for the Packers anymore. And this is why, eventually going back through and changing everything, because at the start of when we started doing this, I was like, oh, Rodgers is still going to be the QB. I've come to terms. He's not going to be the QB anymore. At Green Bay, I have the Steelers winning it. I don't think Jordan Love can do much against that Steelers defense. Home against Denver, I think that's a win too. That Denver offense, very, very high power. If Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater is the quarterback, they cannot really get the ball consistently to their playmakers, and they're going to get eaten alive by that Steelers D. So that's 3 wins for the Steelers right there. And then it gets rough. Home against Seattle, that's going to be an L. I don't think Seattle's going to be a great team, but I think they're going to be a better team than the Steelers. They're bye, and Cleveland is their next game. I think they're going to get swept by Cleveland. Cleveland's a way better team. Showed that in the playoff game against them. Granted, like you said, at the start of the season last year, they made Baker look like a child out there, like he didn't know what to do. I don't think that happens again now. So that's an L. Chicago, Justin Fields is going to be in by this point in the season. He's going to be playing like a man possessed. At least that's what I think we both agree that he's going to be playing like during the season. That's an L against Chicago. Their defense is very similar. I think Justin Fields at this point in time is a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger, and that's what's going to be the difference in that game. Home against Detroit. Now, remember what I said about bad teams getting 1 or 2 wins, their second win. Yeah, Detroit gets their second win of the season, and their second only win of the season against the Steelers here, so that's an L for them. At the Chargers, have to travel to the other side of the country. You're playing against the Sean McVay of defense and Brandon Staley. That defense is going to be good. Difference maker is going to be the QB matchup. I think Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger. Herbert. Jeez. I'm just too much Justin Fields on the mind, man. Too much Justin Fields on the mind. At Cincy, I think they lose this one. I think they split it with Cincy. If Joe Burrow is still healthy and he doesn't get hurt, I think they split it with Cincy and they take an L here. Baltimore, I think they get swept by Baltimore. So that's an L. Just Baltimore is a better team than them. Granted, and I know Steelers fans, I know you won 11 straight games last season. You have to admit, you were like the worst 11-0 team in NFL history. Like that run was at Minnesota. I don't like Minnesota, Hayden. I don't like Minnesota at all this season. I still think the Steelers lose to them though. Just again, at Minnesota, I think you got to give Minnesota home field advantage there. It's just the 2 very similar teams. The defense is better, but Kirk Cousins. Give Minnesota the win there. Home against Tennessee. I don't think it's insane for me to say that that's a loss. All right, especially their end of schedule is rough. Their whole schedule is rough. Just their whole schedule is rough. But home against Tennessee, that's an L. I don't think I have to explain much of that. At Kansas City, that's an L. And then Cleveland, Baltimore, I said that they get swept by them. So those are both L's.
What's your record there?
The record is 3-14. And I looked back through it, and I was thinking, even if this doesn't match up, I don't think the Steelers win more than 7 games this season.
Oh, that's tough. No, this is your problem with not allowing yourself to have your opinion changed. I don't like to change my opinion like after 3 days or something. Like who have we talked about recently? Like the last episode, who was the last episode? The Titans. Like I don't think that I should be changing my opinion on the Titans versus the Steelers. but I think like actually going back through the team and studying them and looking at them actually allows you to change your opinion. So it does make sense that you may have games that differ when you look at them. I know you don't want to do that just to be just to really stick to your guns, but I still
believe Detroit will pick up a stupid win against Pittsburgh. I still believe that.
That's fine, but 3-14 is just too low for this. What I mean, that's not even their floor. Their floor isn't even 3-14. Like they're no way they're that.
I
bad.
think that's their floor.
Okay.
If you look at it, Detroit, and then split it with Cincy, and then Denver. That's 3, maybe 4. Give them that Vegas game.
I mean,
4.
Come on, though. You gave them 3 wins, and one of the teams you have them beating was in the NFC Championship game last year. The only reason you have that as a win is because it's one of the games that you could still select because we haven't talked about the Packers yet.
No.
Yeah. I'll point that out for our fans.
I'm sticking my guns to this. When it comes time for like preseason power rankings, all that, I might give them 1 extra win. Might give them 4. I don't think I'm giving them much more than that.
I don't think you should be giving them much more than 4. If you gave them much more than 4 more, then I would be like, I don't know where they're gonna get those. But yeah, no, it just there's too much good stuff on this team for them to be that bad, in my opinion. But I actually need to get to what I actually think. It's amazing to see how this Pittsburgh Steelers episode is everything we've talked about so far, and yet I feel like 90% of this comes down to Ben Roethlisberger because I really feel like with what they did in the offseason, I know you already said you disagreed with me, so that's fine, we know that, but I feel like they at least slightly improved just their ability to be a more balanced team, and they're a team that really does need to be a more balanced team just in terms of everything. They need to run the ball more. They need to have a short passing game still, but they also need to have a deeper down the field passing game as well. They just need to get everything balanced overall. Because you did mention at one point that you said you thought this team used its short passing game as its run game. No, this team used its short passing game as its short passing game, as its medium passing game, as its deep passing game, as its play action pass game, as its outside run game, and its inside run game. Like they just only ran short route passing game stuff. Because
the line gave Ben no time to do anything else. Like you said, Claypool can definitely extend the field more. Ben does not have enough time to be able to wait for him to get downfield and get open. Because
you gotta look at the concepts though, dude. I mean, if you only run like short like hitches, then it's not. I mean, that's like it doesn't even give it a chance. I don't have too many memories of Ben just getting sacked immediately, and I know it was tough, but I mean, you gotta try it a little more. We also gotta wonder about whether or not he's getting hurt or if he was hurt last season, because I feel like he probably was a little more hurt than he let on. And I feel like he could be a little better this season too. I really do. I'm saying that most of these wins and losses are based like purely on Roethlisberger's play, because I don't think the line will change that much. But in terms of the pass game, I don't think their blocking will be very different from last season. But in the run game, it could be much improved. And if you're a Steelers fan, you have to hope that the blocking in the run game is much improved. But you also have a running back and a tight end now that should help that too. So maybe those will come in handy. Okay, first game at Buffalo, September 12th. I think that's a loss. The Bills beat him before. I think they can beat him again. Josh Allen had a solid game. Not a solid game in the last time. And that was because it was fairly windy. I feel like if it's not windy early in the season in Buffalo, he should just be able to really... He'll just be riled up after the whole offseason. I feel like he'll come out guns a-blazing and have a great opening day, even though this defense is tremendous. A solid day against Pittsburgh, I would say. I shouldn't say just an insane day overall. Just a solid day against Pittsburgh. Maybe like 3 touchdown passes, 280 yards or something through the air. Just something like that. Probably not an insanely high-scoring game, but I think they'll be able to beat Pittsburgh week 1. So Pittsburgh starts 0-1. Then week 2, they play the Raiders. I don't like the Raiders, and I don't love the Steelers either, which I've made clear in the past. But I do think that the Raiders are a worse team. The Steelers are at home. That's a W. Versus the Bengals the following week, the roster of the Steelers is still significantly better than the Bengals. Even if Joe Burrow is the better quarterback, the Steelers overall are significantly better. They should beat the Bengals. Doesn't mean they will, but they should. At the Packers, fourth week of this season, I will say, I'm going to annoy you here because I did a decent amount of toss-up games for these guys because otherwise they were just not going to have enough wins. And I think that one of the reasons I did that is because I feel like Mike Tomlin can make games actually help them get wins that they otherwise shouldn't get. Because I think he's a solid enough coach where he can like bring the team together and get them to play well. Not so much schematically though, which is interesting because I don't think about him too much in terms of what they do on offense or defense. But I think he can bring the team together and get them to play well as a group. So this game at the Packers is a toss-up for me. The following week versus the Broncos, I think that's a W. They're a significantly better team than the Broncos, mostly because of the fact that even though Ben Roethlisberger probably isn't nearly as highly regarded as he was at one point in time, compare him to Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, I feel like he's definitely above those guys. The following week, they play versus the Seahawks. If this wasn't a home game, I probably would have given it to the Seahawks, but this is another one of my toss-up games I had to give them. So that's that. Then they play at Cleveland on Halloween. I think that's not a game that I'm expecting them to win, just because of the fact where Pittsburgh has like holes still to fill on their roster. There's no hole on Cleveland. It's going to be hard to beat Cleveland no matter who you are. Following week versus the Bears, I will tell you something here that I am slowly. This is why I feel like I need to be able to change my opinion. The closer and closer we get to the season, and the more and more I hear Matt Nagy talk, the more and more I'm like, are you kidding me? They're actually just going to sit Justin Fields like the whole year? And at this point, I really don't know. Like, it may not even matter how Andy Dalton's playing. He may be playing like complete crap, and they just may be like, oh well, we don't care. We're 0-3 or 1-2 or whatever. At the point that we said the Bears would actually move on to Justin Fields at, because they realize, hey, he's smart and insane player, and he should be playing at this point in time. And I just don't know if they're going to do that. Every time I hear Matt Nagy talk, he seems like he's throwing that idea like over his shoulder, like, nope, that's not happening. That's not how I'm doing it, because I saw Patrick Mahomes, and that's the only way to get a great quarterback or something. I don't know. It ticks me off, but it's a toss-up because of that. I'm obviously picking the Bears if Justin Fields is playing, because, yeah, we're on the same page thinking that Justin Fields is going to be great, but toss-up at this point in time. Versus the Lions, they're the home team in this. Man, they're a better roster than the Lions, and they're the home team. They should win this. If you call this, the one thing that I'm going to be really mad about is if I don't get that Miami-Indianapolis tie that I've preached so much. I really want that game to be a tie just so I can say that I called that. But if I get that, then I hope you get this game as your one game that you got right. Okay, I'll tell you that right now, but I'm still going to give the game to Pittsburgh. The following week at the Chargers, Chargers should win this, but just because they have a young quarterback and they can play down to their competition in the past. Let's hope that their new coach that you love so much doesn't make them play down to the competition. But this is my final toss-up game for them. It's not a win or a loss. It's just my final toss-up game for them. And the following week they play at the Bengals. That is another W. Should win. Doesn't mean they're gonna, but they should win that one. Then, oh my gosh, I can't believe. See, you don't like Minnesota as much as I do, but the thing is that Minnesota is one of the toughest buildings to play in the league, and I think that they're a solid like all around team. I don't feel like there's. No, I know. I know.
Okay.
I know. It's just I'm grouping these together. Minnesota, like, there's so many things there that are gonna make it hard for Pittsburgh to win that game. And you just look at these last 6 games versus Baltimore, at Minnesota, versus Tennessee, at Kansas City, versus Cleveland, and at Baltimore. I mean, there are obviously 5 of those games, they are underdogs, okay? Obviously. Like, I don't even think it's a question. And then at Minnesota, I feel like there's plenty of things that are going to be going against them in that game that are going to make that game really hard on them. So heading into that, it's looking like before this last 6-game stretch, they could be sitting at like a 7-4, 6-5 type record, somewhere around there for me. But then these last 6 games, I just got an L for every single one because I think the Ravens are significantly better, Tennessee's significantly better, Kansas City, Cleveland, and Baltimore again. And I don't think that Minnesota game is a very easy game either. I think those are all probably losses. So with that being said, just like last season, they got through 11 games and then had this like really tough part where they decided like, oh geez, now we've got to play for the playoffs and everything else that comes with it. They get 11 games in here. They're not 11-0 this time, but they look like they're going to be okay, and then they lose out again to have a terrible end to their season and end up with my prediction at like 7-10. That last part is just terrible. Those last 6 games to me are just awful for them because it's going to look like they're doing okay throughout the season, and then those last 6 will just kill them. Even if they pull off the game against Minnesota, that gets them to 8-9. They're not going to make the playoffs with that record. But that's what they get considering that they won the AFC North and they play in the AFC North. They got to play all those number 1 teams from other divisions, and they've still got to play Baltimore and Cleveland twice each. It's just not a situation that's very great for them to be able to have too much success.
Yeah, you know what I compared their like 6-game end of season stretch to when I was going through it? The Colts like 5-game stretch to start the season, where you and I both said, if you win one of these games or 2 of them, you are so thankful at that point because you're going through a gauntlet at that point. And if you can come out like 2-3 or even 1-4, you should be very, very happy because even the Chiefs would not win. Like we said, the Chiefs wouldn't win every single one of these games straight.
Yeah.
The Bucs wouldn't win every single one of these games straight because it's such a hard stretch of games.
Yeah, no, and I think like the Chiefs, if the Chiefs or the Bucs were playing in these games, they would be happy to go 500 in them. Like, really, I mean, 4-2 maybe would be more of their goal, but I mean, that's just like terribly difficult. If you're not, I don't know, it feels like a lot more teams have that type of thing this season than in the past have. But yeah, it's really weird. A lot of it comes down to Big Ben and how well they can run the ball. Defense will be fine.
Yeah, we really neglected talking about Big Ben for a majority of this, but the team will go as far as he does. And that's kind of why I have them at such a crappy record, is I don't think he's going to be able to do much. He kind of willed himself through the tail end of last season and fell apart in that last game. He's got to hope that the run game does something because it's not going to be good on his body to be throwing the ball 50, 55 times, 55 plus the whole season because they still can't get something going with like a great talent in the backfield in Najee Harris.
Yeah, I agree. I hope they can get it going though, just because I mean it's I feel like the NFL is better when teams like the Steelers, where we're kind of like, yeah, they're hovering around the middle of the road, where like we are seeing those teams play well, like seeing like Chicago with Trubisky last season play against the Saints in the wild card round, like that was not anything that anybody was very excited to watch. So I mean, let's hope that these teams that we're kind of saying, well, you're actually saying they're going to be just atrocious, that I am saying are going to hover around the middle of the road will stay competitive. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's what I want. My 7th seed, they're taking away a bye from a 2 seed, so I at least want that extra game to be entertaining. Like I want there to be an upset. I don't want some like, well, you can't even be 500 now. Some team that's barely above or barely below 500 to just sneak in.
Well, the Colts could make it at 500.
Oh yeah, but I don't want some team to just get to sneak in and get smacked. Like I want it to be a competitive game.
Yeah. No, the Colts or the Dolphins could make it at 8-1.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No. I hope we didn't miss anything. We got a pretty solid time here at 59.5 minutes for these guys so far. So hopefully we didn't forget anything, Pittsburgh fans. I mean, I'm sure you're going to tell us we're terrible because we said
Mhm.
bad things. So when you say bad things, that means that we hate you. But sorry,
Yep.
we don't actually hate you. But you know,
Love the defense. Love
Yeah.
the defense.
yeah. But what else can we say? I guess not much more. I'm all set. Are you?
Yeah, I think we could cut this here.